So we're going to do Daf Mem Gimel, and we're going to cover this idea of the Gzera de Rabba, of why you can't shake the Lulav on Shabbos, blow the shofar on Shabbos, read the Megillah on Shabbos, because you might carry 4 Amos in the streets. So we're going to learn a very interesting Rashi on that. And then number 2 is we say that that's the same thing that we apply for not doing the Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos is for shofar and for Megillah. So we have to understand, for example, the Rabbi Rashab and others of Chabad say, how could a small chance that you might violate Shabbos, especially there are many opinions that say that most of the public thoroughfares we have today are not even a Rishus HaRabim D'Oraisa, with some exceptions like Manhattan, but and maybe Brooklyn. But for a small chance that somebody might violate a law, you're going to take away one of the biggest foundational mitzvahs of the year of shofar. And number 3 is on the first day of Sukkot, we actually, at the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they did not make a decree, and they would actually shake the Lulav and Esrog in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos. And then it seems like it's possible that they may not have instituted right away. There's at least a Havamin in the Gemara that they allowed people to shake the Lulav and Esrog the first day, even on Shabbos, even not in the Beis HaMikdash, and perhaps even after the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the question is why. Usually we don't divide up, we'll get to that a little more details about that question. Well, we don't divide up the Jewish community if we can avoid it, but we'll get to that question later. Let me just, unless it's like you didn't understand something. Yeah, that's the next thing. And number 4 is Rabbi Elazar has a special limud from the pasuk with L'kachtem l'chem b'yom harishon that it's even on Shabbos that you would not only take the Lulav and Esrog, that's obvious because there's no malacha of taking the Lulav and Esrog, but even machshirei Lulav and Esrog, even if you had to, so to speak, violate Shabbos to take the Lulav from the tree, which is a Isser malacha on Shabbos, he learns that the pasuk is telling you that you're allowed to do that, which leads me to another famous Taz. It's called the Taz HaYadua, that tries to explain why sometimes the Torah tells us to do something on Shabbos, and we do it, like Bris Milah, and other times, like Lulav and Esrog, we don't do, at least today. So what's the difference? So there's a famous Taz on that, and somebody wrote a book called the Taz HaYadua, the known Taz. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 5 is we have to understand that the Gemara uses up about 10, 20, maybe 10, 15 lines of this daf to seemingly answer a simple question. Is Lulav and Esrog day and night? Answer is day. What about Sukkah? Is the Sukkah day and night? Answer is both. Well, that didn't take 15 lines of Gemara, did it? But yet you'll see the Gemara has to use Gzera Shava from Miluim to tell us that. And on this, we're going to learn the Sod Yesharim. This is the grandson of the Meir Shiloh, that takes a look at the difference between day and night. What is the idea of night? And he's going to compare the night to something that's not yet ready. You don't know. Things are happening at night, but it's not clear what they are. So they're going to represent one thing that the sukkah is more connected to, And on the other hand, the Lulav, which represents what you do during the day, represents what a person wants to receive because they see how good it is. And it's not something that hopefully will turn out okay, but we don't really understand it right now. Number 6 is the mitzvah of Arava. And number 7 is what Arava is, the willows that we now do. What we do today, Hoshana Rabbah, is a remnant of what they would do every day in the Beis HaMikdash. And particularly, they would do a bigger thing on the 7th day of what we call Hoshana Rabbah. Actually, not the 7th day, the 8th day. Good question. Just the Kohanim. Today, it's everyone. And what do we do today? And then what's the connection? And then if we get to number 8, which is it's the end of the daf, beginning of next daf, there's a Rashi that says that we don't divide the community. We don't have like Eretz Yisrael doing one thing and Chutz La'aretz doing another thing. Although that's not even true because we have Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galiot, so that has to be understood. So that's Rashi's explanation: the Shlo La'asot Yisrael Agudot, not to make congregations that are different from one another, which is exactly what we have today. So, or maybe not. Maybe the fact that we all do certain basic halachot, even if there's certain minhagim, certain halachot that we don't agree on, but maybe we have enough cohesion to be a broader community. And those are the 8 things. Now, before I just go right into the Gemara, I wanted to do about 4 halachas of the Rambam because the Gemara is kind of all over the place. It's like it's a little bit of a historical perspective of, let's say, when and when they didn't shake Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos. So because it might be confusing, I want to start off with the halachas of today. And in this, the Rambam is not always halacha. A lot of people do, because it's halacha sefer, is the halacha. Quite often, in this case, it actually is. The Tur took note of the Rambam for sure. There was the Rush. There are other great people around that he followed. Yeah, it's not that the Rambam didn't influence halach, of course, he did. Huge influence. I'm just saying it's like oversimplification to just say the halacha is, But in this case, most of these things, the halacha is. And you'll see why. So it's actually in the back of the handout. Page 13. I only gave you the English. Rambam says, this is Hilchos Lulav, Perek Zayin. Well, I said it's the halacha, but that's not the halacha. But he's giving you a historical introduction, which is what the Rambam does sometimes. The mitzvah of taking the lulav is in every place, this you have translated, in every age, even on the Shabbos. So he's basically telling you that midoraisa, it should be done on Shabbos, even now. But that applies only on the first day of the festival, not all of the days, only on the first day. Because it says, the verse specifies, take for yourself on the first day. However, in days of old, when there was a Beis HaMikdash, that's when they took it the other 7 days. I'm sorry, the other 6 days. I keep saying 7. It's 7 days, not including the first day. So the other 6 days. Thank you, Aaron. Shivas Yamim. But that includes the first day, so it's another 6 days. In the holy place alone, it is to be taken on each of the 7 days of the festivals, as the above verse continues, and you shall rejoice before God, your Lord, 7 days. By the way, a lot of people don't know that. We know the Bavli, I don't believe mentions this. I believe the Bavli says this, that pasuk is going on having the chiyuv to take the lulav and esrog in the Beis Hamikdash the rest of the Chag. But the Yerushalmi has another opinion, which is rejected by the Bavli, which is that's talking about shlomin. It's not talking about the lulav and esrog. But we'll leave the Yerushalmi out of it. I don't believe it. It's in the Bavli, although Rashi quotes it in our daf, the Yerushalmi, without saying it's the Yerushalmi. He just quotes that like although you could say that other interpretation. Yerushalmi has both opinions, and even the Yerushalmi seems to indicate that we don't follow the opinion that it's going on Shlomim, even though there is a chiyuv for Shlomim, but we can learn it out from other things as well.
You asked the question. Push off. Don't let this with your right side.
Yeah.
Kabbalistic perspective.
Is it? That's why Kabbalah is dangerous.
You're ready to Rishus HaYochid, right? Rishus HaYochid is Shabbos. It's not Rishus HaRabbah. Rishus HaYochid is Hashgacha Pratis. Where you going? So it almost means it's a metaphor.
We're given mitzvahs, and yet the Torah gave us them. It's in the Rambam saying that's a chiyuv d'oraisa to do it. So we'll. Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Why do they use that much?
Yeah, we're gonna get there. You're good. You're, like I told you, a step ahead here. So in the holy place alone, it is to be taken on each of the 7 days of the festival, as the verse above continues. That we were learning about that the last couple of weeks. You shall rejoice before God, your Lord, 7 days. When the Shabbos falls during the later days, the lulav is not taken on the Shabbos. This is a decree, lest one carry 4 cubits in the public domain, as decreed regarding the shofars. Interesting here, what does he mention? Not Megillah, but he does mention shofar. Now we continue into the next halacha, which is halacha Yudalad. Why did we not make the decree in effect on the first day of the Chag? Because it is a mitzvah of the Torah even outside of Jerusalem, meaning the first day, everyone in the world has to shake lulav and esrog. Thus, the laws applied to it are not the same as those applying to the remaining days. In other words, the rest of the Chag is weaker. Only in the Beis Hamikdash has to be shaken. Because of the subsequent days of the festival, a person is obligated to take lulav only in the holy place. Again, but don't even stop. Let's continue, because there's so many problems with that. Like, what about shofar? We have to blow shofar everywhere, and yet we made a decree on it. So let's continue. When the temple was destroyed, I'm still on page 13. We're going backwards. Yeah. Start from the Goyish side. When the temple was destroyed, the sages ordained that the lulav was to be taken everywhere for the entire 7 days of the festival as a remembrance of the temple. So first things first is nowadays we do it everywhere. And you're saying, why? I learned the Rambam. We're going to learn the Gemara. By the way, almost every halacha in this Rambam is from our daf that we're going to do. It's almost word for word extracted from the daf. So the question is, why do we do that? So it's called the Zecher LaMikdash. It's called a commemoration of what they did in the Beis Hamikdash. So, and he says, Zecher LaMikdash is a commemoration of the Mikdash. You make the bracha to take the lulav. Because it's a mitzvah from the sages. But this decree, as all of the decrees that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made in reference to what we do today because of remembrance of the Beis Hamikdash, page 13, will go back and revert to the way they were in former times when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt. So, by the way, this is also the Rambam. That's the beauty of the Rambam, is he just answered a question. I said, "What?" He's giving us a little history. It's nice of him to help us with our Gemara, which is history, so it gets confusing if you don't read it in a more linear way, the way the Rambam delineates it. But what he knew I was going to give the shir and I needed help, and you guys would have it. No, that too. But what he wanted to show us is that the Beis Hamikdash will come back. So the halachas I told you of when the Beis Hamikdash was there, that's not the past, that's the future. You hear?
Not only will it come back, but his writings will still be listened to.
That's why a lot of people like the Rambam, because he covers the future. He's one of the few halachic authorities there is, like the Aruch HaShulchan, the La'asid, trying to like do that forward thinking, what will happen. But it's basically the Rambam does that. So while the temple was standing, this is halacha tes zayin, the Lulav was to be taken in the holy place, even when the first day of Sukkot fell on Shabbos. The same applies in other places. That's what I read to you in our little handout. Number 3. When they were certain of this day, was celebrated as a holiday in Eretz Yisrael. Meaning, if you lived in Eretz Yisrael, you got to take Lulav and Esrog the first day, even on Shabbos. But if you lived outside of Eretz Yisrael, no such luck. You couldn't shake Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos on the first day. No one could shake Lulav and Esrog on any other day of Sukkot that fell out on Shabbos. The only discussion is about the first day. Other days we don't.
Calendar fixed before the Rambam?
It was. However, the places that were distantly removed from Jerusalem would not take the Lulav on this day because of the doubt involved. Now, the Rambam explains your question, and I'll give you some homework to read. When the temple was destroyed, the sages forbade even the inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael who have sanctified the new month to take the Lulav on the Shabbos on the first day of Sukkot. Why? This was instituted because of the inhabitants of the distant settlements who were not aware that when the new month had been declared, meaning they had what we call Sveika Diyoma, a doubt about which day was the actual day of Yom Tov. Thus, a uniform guideline was established. That was number 8, right? Not to make different communities that have different customs, that there's no uniformity. Rather than having some take the Lulav on the Shabbos and some not. The guiding principle was that the obligation of, page 14, taking the Lulav on the first day applies in all places, and there's no longer a temple to use as a point of distinction. Now, what is he talking about? Temple to be used as a point of distinction. Our Gemara is going to explain that when there was a temple, they were not worried about the fact that the people in Eretz Yisrael would shake Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos, and those who were not would not shake Lulav and Esrog, because the temple is like the heart and soul of the Jewish people. So even if you were doing something a little different because you weren't close enough to the temple, you knew the way it should be. You knew the way it was supposed to be. You just were a little bit out of whack because you were too far away for it. Okay, and we're going to learn Rashi does not share the Rambam's opinion about it being the temple per se. He sees it more as the function of a based in smuchim that are mekadesh the chadashim. But there's a living embodiment of sages that are setting the calendar, every month and every year. Hillel, the Hakatan, he made the current calendar that we have. But I told you I'm going to give you homework. The next halachas are your question about what you're talking about. But I did not include it in the shir. Okay, so that is the Rambam. A couple things just to note on the Rambam. Peter, do me a favor, go to my office. There's a big, thick, not a Rambam. There's a big, thick notebook that I was taking notes in. And it's either right in my office where I'd be sitting, like right where I'm sitting, or I used it to make a copy and it's by the copy machine. But yes. Okay. So back to the Gemara now. The Mishnah had said, the Mishnah Amen Beis, Ahmed Beis had said that Lulav Arava Shisha B'Shiva, you don't have it, so I'm just gonna, Joseph will trust me, that in the course of the holiday, the 8-day holiday, right, the 7 days of Sukkot and the subsequent 8th day that we call Shmini Atzeres, the Lulav and the Arava, again, what is the Arava? That's today's shear, so just be patient. What exactly? They did something with willows in the Beis HaMikdash. Was 6 or 7 days. Now the Gemara explains. Lulav, I'm sorry, the Mishnah. What does it mean that the Lulav would be for 7 days? If the first day of Sukkot would fall out on Shabbos, then you would take the Lulav on Shabbos, like the Rambam just said, and you would have a total of 7 days of shaking the Lulav and Esrog. But if the first day of Yontif did not fall out on Shabbos, then you would only shake the Lulav and Esrog 6 days, because whatever day was Shabbos, you would not shake it off. And the Gemara also says, Arava, did that work? There was the opposite. If the last day fell out on Shabbos, then you would shake, you would not, I was saying shake. You would do something with Arava, either carry it around, the Gemara will say, thank you, Peter, or you would lean it against the Mizbeach. You would do it all 7 days. If the last day, the 7th day, what we call today Hoshana Rabbah, fell out on Shabbos, it doesn't fall out on Shabbos. It's in our Gemara. V'shar kol hayam shisha. But if the last day doesn't fall out on Shabbos, then you would only do the Arava, the procession. I just call it procession. I don't know if it was Machlokas. Okay, so that's the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, why don't you take a little bit of Esrog on Shabbos? What's the problem with taking a little bit of Esrog on Shabbos? The Gemara says it's tilto ba'alma. It's just taking something that, what is it, maybe muksa, and that's not significant compared to doing something that's a mitzvah, and let that push away that minor rabbinic infringement of muksa. And Rabbah says it's a gzera shamit lana b'yalav chitzabaki l'lomad v'yavirenu, and now is mem gimel. Amadal, this is where you have on page 1. V'yavirenu arba amos b'shusharam. Maybe you're going to take it in your hand, and you don't really know what to do with it. Maybe you don't know how to assemble it. Maybe you don't know how to wave it. Maybe you don't know if it's kosher. You don't know something that you need to do with it. And you'll go ask a rabbi, you'll ask somebody who knows, and you'll carry it in the Rishus Harabim, in the public thoroughfare, for Amos. Behind the time of the shofar, behind the time of the Megillah. That's the same reason why we don't blow shofar on Shabbos, and we don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. Now, there's a very interesting Rashi here. Rashi says, top Rashi, you don't have it. I'll just read it to you. I said you don't have it. On page 1, but it could have said that you'll take it you'll walk out with it, you'll take it from your home into the public thoroughfare. Ella shebiro mikomot vinyanim aminan yesh lachush lahavarat arba amos ve'ein lachush lahotza'ah. In most situations, most predicaments, we're more concerned or worried about carrying it in the public thoroughfare for 4 amot, for 4 cubits, and not as concerned with taking it out from the private to the public domain. For example, kigon, let's say you're in a garden, or you're in a place that's not a full Reshut HaYachid. And here you have an interesting Rabbi Kiva Eger that say, sometimes you have a Reshut HaYachid Midoraisa, that biblically it is a Reshut HaYachid, but rabbinically it's not treated like a Reshut HaYachid. Like that could be like possibly a karfe, for example. I'm not sure about which one. One of them that Rabbi Kiva Eger points out, this still could be problematic. But let's say, for example, it is not a Reshut HaYachid, not the Rabbana, not the Oraisa. It's some type of, it's this garden. It doesn't have the walls that would make it a Reshut HaYachid. But it's private enough that it's definitely not a Reshut HaRabim. So you're standing there, you picked up the Lulav and Esrog because it's an outdoor day, a beautiful day, and now you see that you don't know what you're doing, and you're like, let me go to my rabbi with it. And you walk out to the street. So there's this idea that when you pick something up, and then you didn't pick it up to carry it out into the street. You just picked it up for some other thing, to use it in the garden. So that since the intention for the picking it up wasn't to carry it, you would not be considered motzi mirshus l'rishus, somebody that's carrying from one jurisdiction to another. Because you need 3 things in a hotza'ah, in taking something out. An akira, uprooting it, a hotza'ah, a taking it out, and a hanacha, and a putting it down. But the akira only counts as if it's a continual action, both in your intention and your action. So for example, even if you intended to take it out, you picked it up, and then you decided to sit down and take a little rest, that is considered as if you put it down again. So it starts the clock, so that interrupted the flow. And then if you forgot that you even had it and just stood up without knowing that you were had it on your back, again, you would have a lack of an akira, or you forgot where you were going. You forgot that you intended to go out. So you need akira, hotzah, and hanacha. Yeah. Of the l'shem schach, the sale. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a malacha gerua, so there has to be. It's not just that you carried it. It has to be much more than that, right? Yeah. 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 It's similar. There's some level of kavanah here, but he says, "V'yeshkan isur avar b'shus harabim." So there could be that there was no hotzah from Rishus. So A, there's no hotzah from Rishus Hayachid because you're in a garden, and B, to the point that it was just more talking about the akira, he says, when you picked it up to take it as to shake Lulav and Esrog with. You didn't pick it up saying, I'm an Amaretz, let me find a rabbi. You pick it up, and then you realize you're an Amaretz, and you don't know what to do with it. Right, but when you picked it up, you thought you knew what you're doing, and therefore you didn't do an akira to take it out. You didn't pick it up to take it out. You picked it up to be yotze the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog. So v'nimloch hotzio, and then you change your mind to take it out. Pater mishum hotzah, you'd be not guilty of carrying into Rishus Harabim imlo amalafish unless you rested. Stopped that akira and did a new akira by getting up again or starting again. Bain time. Shabbos. Now Tosfos points out here on the second thing, if you need kavana to do the akira and Rishus Hayachid, you also need kavana to do akira and Rishus Harabim. What's the difference? He likes the Rashi's first explanation, not the second. So much so that in Rishima Shiurim, Rabbi Soloveitchik suggests that it could be that Rashi holds a dual opinion about the nature of Akira and Hanacha, a difference. In Rishus HaYachid, he says you need to have a proper Akira. That's one of the essential elements of the Malacha of Hotzah. It's essential to it. It's not just Akira's picking something up. Talking about picking up the Lulav and Esser. Akira it literally means to uproot something. It means something is it has to be on a Makam Dalet al Dal. It has to be on like something like a table. Can't be, like floating around, Okay. Now, and the Gemara says, "Hainu time." So that's number one. And understand. Look, the simple answer I give you. I give even though I asked the question that Rafael and I'm quoting great rebbes who asked the question. It doesn't really make sense from like a halachic perspective to make such a chumrah for such a small chance that something like that might happen. But the truth is, I remember one time there was some event on a Matzah Shabbos, and there was some people, maybe they weren't Shomer Shabbos, they like really were anxious to like prepare for the event, And I was like, even if you yourself know that, okay, the event is Matzah Shabbos, you're not going to do anything till Shabbos is over, but you're always going to have some people who are not on the same level. So the simple answer is, look, if Klal Yisrael is going to be Sheikh Lulav and Esrog, reading the Megillah, blowing the shofar, there's some people, don't assume everyone's like you. That's a simple answer. You hear Rafael this? It's a good answer, because meaning if you're mechayev everyone to do it, some people will end up carrying it. It's true. It is true. They're not idiot. Rabbah wasn't an idiot to say that. It's true. It's true. But the question is, shofar is such a big mitzvah. Lulav and Esrog is such a big mitzvah. There are many things we do on Shabbos. We do a bris milah on Shabbos. We don't wait. We have a chiyuv to eat in the sukkah even on Shabbos. You don't say we're carrying tons of things into the sukkah on Shabbos. Maybe somebody's going to do hotzah or Shem Yavrian Adalam Shusarabim about the practical things that he needs to get for the sukkah. We don't say that. So it could be. So this is number two. That. I'm going to share a little bit from the Me'eshilach. There's other explanations. Rafael was sharing one about the Rishus HaYachid versus the Rishut HaRabim.
By the way, that's why
Yeah.
you're actually thinking things going out of the because you finally are actually concrete. Should be going from like 5 owners to go to one.
So just to like explain a little bit what I think Rafael is saying is that why is it a malacha to go from Rishut HaYachid to Rishut HaRabim and Dalet Amot Rishut HaRabim? So I'm not gonna. There's a whole Gemara. There's a whole beautiful chapter, multiple chapters in Masechta Shabbos about the first chapter, the Hazorek, about the malacha of carrying. Carrying, by the way, is a terrible translation. It's not carrying. It's hotza'ah. It's taking it from a private domain to public domain with the akira, with the hanacha, with all of these things. So to understand that, we have to understand that Beruchniut, Rishut HaYachid represents God consciousness, and Rishut HaRabim means consciousness of the marketplace, which basically means the jostling for a position to make, to get that dollar, win over your competitor or whatever. That kind of like everything is separate. Every man is for themselves, so to speak. Yeah, so you're accumulating and you're winning and losing all the time in that world. As opposed to Rishut HaYachid. Rishut HaYachid is this is the way God made it. So it's like you're in that private domain. But there are other elements there also. So for example, the Rishut HaYachid could represent where we talked about in Ishbitz, that is the Zchut Avot. It's meaning like where you're the Yisodot, the foundations of where you come from are very strong there. And Rishut HaRabim means, you're going, it's the marketplace of ideas, not just commerce. It's also competitive in terms of people are saying, why do you think you're right? There's other religions. Like, what if you were born as some other religion? What would you do then? Like, so all of a sudden, you're confused, so to speak. So, by the way, the Gemara will actually say, you're going to like it, Rafael, that the reason why they didn't make the Gzera against Sheikh Lulav on the first day of Yom Tov when it falls on Shabbos is because they instituted that you should do it at home. The reason why they did it is because they were physically attacking each other, fighting over the Lulav. But maybe the Gemara says it's another reason. And in addition to that, is if it's a homebound mitzvah, you'll remember to do it at home. But I guess they were attacking each other. It was a shul. It was the base of Migdash. Because they were Lulav and Esrog. They were giving them out, and then people would be punching each other to get them. They were throwing them. People were hitting each other to get a better, not good. Danny was there. Danny remembers. Danny had some vague memories in the past life fighting for his Lulav and Esrog. Yeah. It's nothing is new, right? Okay. So that's more like Kabbalah, and Chabad basically talks about what Shabbos is. It's a beautiful stuff. I spent months of my life learning it. Now I forgot what it said, but the Rebbe Rashab has Tafresh Samach Vav is a year, and it's about, and Tafresh Ayin Beis, like these two massive Hasidic tomes. They start out with like 3 or 4 Maimarim on this topic, on this thing. Okay. Then the Ishbitzer says something which is a Klal Gadol B'Torah, which is a very important rule. As he says, the idea of a mitzvah is God telling you you can do something in the world. It's like I made you a partner, so you can be like what we call bechira. You're a free agent. Then the idea of Shabbos is God says no. You're getting ahead of yourself. You're getting too arrogant, even spiritually arrogant. Spiritual people could also be equally competitive and equally arrogant to materialistic people. So God says, I don't want to even, don't, on some level, God is saying, you can't do anything. You have to stop being such a, busybody with your mitzvahs. What do they call them today? Like virtual signaling or holier than thou, or whatever it is that you're like, you're just building up your ego with mitzvahs. So Shabbos is telling you, remember, God is in control again. But then, we say Ein Shvus B'Mikdash. In the Beit HaMikdash, you could do certain things that would be considered prohibited, and sometimes you actually are enjoined to do a malacha that's required on Shabbos in the Beit HaMikdash, like the karbanot. Not all karbanot, but the daily karbanot are dafka brought on Shabbos and Yantiv, extra musafim, the extra karbanot. So what the Ishbitzer says is very beautiful. Is when you're in that special holy place, you're acting. It's only God acting through you. You stop thinking it's you. It's a nice part, right? You just become the one who God is acting through, and that's Ein Shvut B'Mikdash, or the things you do in the Beit HaMikdash. So again, and that would explain also what Rafael was saying. Why is it Daled Amot? So there's a difficult Rashi and the Tosfos that argues in the second point of Rashi, and there's a Aruch LaNer, there's a Rabbi Kiva Eger that discussed the Rashi at great length. Why doesn't he just say, the Gemara say, Shiotzienu Bibesel Rishut Harabim or Rishut Hayachid Rishut Harabim. Rashi almost never spends that much time answering a question. He usually answers a question without even acknowledging the question. That's the brilliance of Rashi. Here, all of a sudden, you're like, when he doesn't do that, it's like he's not as smooth, So like I said, what's bothering Rashi? Something really bothered him, and he said it out loud, and he comes up with these two answers. But there's an idea also. Lubavitcher Rebbe has a book called Kuntrus and Yana Shel Torah HaChassidut. Very interesting, controversial book. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, before he was the Rebbe, he wrote an essay of what's the essence of Chassidus, and he claimed the essence is Lashana Esteva Midosa. Again, very controversial, that you could be able to change your nature. I say that's very controversial. I don't know how many people would agree with that. Yeah, so they said the same thing. But in the book, he wants to take one idea and show you how that idea is in Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, and he uses the idea of Dalet Amot Shel Adam Konalo, that you can acquire something. Usually, you acquire something by picking it up if it's lost, but you could also say it's mine because it's within my 4 cubits. So he talks about how that's connected to the Yechida, thank you, Ari. To the highest level of the neshama. That's not mislabesh. That's not enclosed within your body, but it surrounds you. It's like it's like there but not there. It's around you but not in you. So that's the Dalet Amot. And he says, look, it has a halachic implication. It's like that's how you see Kabbalah affecting halacha. But similarly, the same concept would apply to Shemi Avirenu Dalet Amot B'Shtaram. Where are you taking it out from? Well, you are no longer in the place you were before, because you left your own Dalet Amot. You went out of yourself, even though you're already in the Rishut HaRabim. So you could say Rishut HaRabim Ahin, Rishut HaRabim Maher. It's the same Rishut HaRabim. No, every Dalet Amot creates like a new level of hotzah, of taking something out. And that's what he's being meramis, perhaps, on that chash, that stirring of the pot, so to speak, that could take you out of your own place, that connects to that level of your neshama, because you want to do a mitzvah, but you don't know how to do it, and you're going to carry it in the street, so to speak. You could the light will be there through the light of Shabbos, as the Rebbe Rashab says. Okay, so that's number 1 and 2. There's more there. Beautiful stuff here, but let's go further. So now we're going to learn about this beautiful concept of why were they able to have agudot. Why was it different then that the Israeli Jews at the time of the Beit HaMikdash could shake the Lulav and Esrog in Israel on Shabbos, the first day fell out on Shabbos, and outside of Israel, when it was places that were distant, that needed to get the mess, that they didn't know when the month would be, and then afterwards. Exactly. So let's do that in the Gemara. I don't know what happened to my thing. There it is. Page. You know what? We're still on page 1. On second paragraph. Ihachi yom yishanami rishon hatakinol erabanan bebeso. Hatena achar takana kadbekana mari kalamein. But the Gemara says, if so, that the first day of Sukkot that coincides with Shabbos, one should not take the lulav because of the concern that you might carry it. The Gemara says that in regards to the first day, the sages instituted that it should be taken in your home because of what we talked about, so because they were beating each other up. So since they prohibited you from taking the lulav out of the house, the person will remember and not take it out of the house. The Gemara says this is well after the ordinance that one takes the lulav in this house was instituted, because that was after these fights got unbearable. However, prior to the introduction of the ordinance, what is there to say? Why were they able to take the lulav on the first day? Page 2. Rather, Since the first day we take Lulav and Esrog anywhere, it's universal, not the rest of the 6 days. So the rabbis did not decree that one should not do it on Shabbos. Hanach the Leishim and Ator Bigvul Gozu B'Hurabana. But the other days that are not biblically required outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the rabbis decreed not to shake Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos. Ihachi ha'idinami. What about now? So we should still continue to shake Lulav and Esrog when Shabbos is the first day of Sukkot. We don't really know the calendar. The Rambam points out that since we didn't know, even though we do know, we treat it today as if we don't know. The Gemara asks, well, maybe the people who live in Eretz Yisrael, close enough to hear what the court decided, should take Shabbos first day. The Lulav. The Gemara says, yeah, you're right. They would bring their Lulav to the Har Habayis, and that's where they would get into the fights. And B'Tanya Idach, but there's another Mishnah that says, to the synagogues. The first one was when they had a temple. The second Mishnah is when they didn't have a temple. So the Gemara concludes that is the case. That's where the Rama was quoting our Gemara. How do we know that you should take it everywhere? Because the pasuk says, take it. Rashi says that's not mashma'ot. That's not like a diak. That's just what the plain. That's pshat. Lachem, mishlachem, let's just show sagazlas. We already learned it has to be yours, not borrowed or stolen. But yom mafila b'Shabbos. Now here is where there's a machlokus. But yom, even on Shabbos, rishon afila b'gvulin. Rishon means everywhere. Harishon lam shen nedocha eliyam for rishon bavad. That it only pushes it away to do it on Shabbos on the first day. Amar Mar, the master was incredulous. He said, b'Shabbos. Why does it have to say even on Shabbos? Michti tilto ba'almo. It's just muksa. On the bottom of page 4. It's just the Mishra tilto. The Rashi points out, as far as the Torah is concerned, there is no such thing as muksa. Muksa didn't happen yet. So does the Torah have to permit you something that they didn't even have anything to do with yet? Muksa is not a biblical mitzvah. Rabbi says a big chiddush. It's not talking about Lulav. Lulav, of course, you don't need a pasuk to permit it on Shabbos. It's talking about the preparatory stages, even if you have to violate Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer says the preparatory state of even severing it from the tree can also be done on Shabbos based on this pasuk. My time at Rabbi Eliezer, Shabbos. Now, because that's how he reads that verse. He interprets it to mean even on Shabbos. And what do you need it for? Even to sever it on Shabbos. To say, take the Lulav and Esrog during the day, not at night. How does he know that it's only during the day? He learns it out from the end of that verse that says, rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. That implies specifically days and not nights. I might think, learn out days from Sukkah. Just like the Sukkah is day and night. I would also think that here, Lulav and Esrog is day and night. The Gemara is, okay, so now we stop for a moment and ask the question. How could you make a separation of the Jewish people of Eretz Yisrael versus the Jewish people outside of Eretz Yisrael? Now, if you say, why not? It's the end of our daf says we don't make agudot. The reason why we don't do that today, for example, why don't we do that today? Why don't we still do in Eretz Yisrael? They should have first Lakat Nam Yom Harishon even on Shabbos, and Chutz La'aretz out of respect for the fact that we didn't know the calendar at some point, we still won't take it on Shabbos when it falls on the first day. The Gemara says because we don't want to divide the community. So why did they divide it then? What happened? What changed? So, what? This is a good question. Rishonim Achronim asked the same question. You're not the first one. It's a good question. So the answer to the first question is, the Rambam says, because of the base of Mikdash. Base of Mikdash is a unifying thing. Even if we make a decree on Chutz La'aretz that we don't make on Eretz Yisrael, it's because they had a base of Mikdash. So that already, B'meila meant, yeah. So what is so the Ishbitzer says that there's a part of the body that's a regulator of the whole body. Usually it's the heart. Microbiome. Now I say usually used to be the heart. Now it's the gut. The truth is, every part of the body is all integrated into each other. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to claim I understand what it is, but there's some part of the bodies that are like so essential that if they stop working, right? You don't have long to live. Let's say the brain, the heart. These are functions that you need for the whole body. So Eretz Yisrael, but particularly more than Eretz Yisrael, the Beis HaMikdash is like that gathering place where everything is. It's like the heart of Klal Yisrael. So even if there's a group on the outside, so to speak, that can't follow, there's a Rabbanim Xer on them that they might do tiltul on Shabbos of Lulav. We don't say that the Beis HaMikdash has to bend to them. They can't do it because they're not on a level to do it. But the people in Eretz Yisrael are on the level. They have the source of having that connection, and everyone else should be zeicha to be l'ragal. Yeah. There's a kedusha. Yeah. By the way, a lot of this sugya here is going to be about, like, it's not really here as much as by shofar. There's a lot of conversation about where exactly could they blow the shofar. There it seemed to be in Yerushalayim, but there's a machlokus, I think, between the Rishonim.
Shofar when basically just turn around on Shabbos.
Yes,
That's the question.
yes, they did.
It's
Because they knew. The Ran, yeah. So anyway, the Ran says the reason why we don't do it today is because when they were Mekadosh al Pi Ariya, they often didn't know at the beginning of the day when if it was actually Rosh Hashanah or not. So even though we know now, we're always afraid of what happens if we don't know. So
why did it make a difference whether they knew or didn't know with respect to whether the first day of Yontif was Shabbos or not?
if they didn't know if it was Yontif, so you wouldn't blow the shofar if it wasn't Yontif. If it wasn't Rosh Hashanah, let's say, you're not going to blow the shofar. You didn't know till the Beis Din took the Eidim.
Right. Why does it make a difference if the first day of Rosh Hashanah is on
Shabbos? Potentially, this question would be a valid question for a shofar. Why don't we blow shofar in the place where they know? Well, the answer is A, they didn't know, and if they did know, it was rare enough that we didn't want to make it like we since they could possibly not have known, we consider it as if they didn't know. Kind of the way we have Yom Tov Sheni. Remember, everyone has 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. That's the only holiday that even in Eretz Yisrael you have 2 days because they also couldn't find out in time, right? Okay. Anyway, so that's a little bit about number 3. There's a Rashi. I don't have time to do it, but number 4 is Rabbi Elazar's opinion. Is even the Machshirei mitzvah are docha Shabbos. It's a very interesting chiddush, and there's a question that's asked. I mentioned before. There's a famous Taz, and he says, if you are going to tell people, the rabbis tell people not to do a mitzvah, you're going to be mevatel a mitzvah because of Shabbos. That's forbidden. For example, the Torah says, "B'yom hashmini yimo," and the Gemara Darshans in Parak and Shabbos. Rabbi Allah Shadimila. Thank you, Howard. You're better than I am. And it says on the 8th day you should circumcise, even on Shabbos. What that means is, if the rabbis are going to say, well, maybe you're going to carry the knife in Rosh Hashanah, you're going to go to the mole, we'll go to a better mole to ask his opinion. That's something you carry.
That's a mitzvah.
But you do the bris milah. So the Taz says, because if you would say not to do it, if you'd make xera, then you're going against what the Torah said to do. The Torah said even on Shabbos. So the question that the Rishonim ask is according, I don't know if it's Rishonim or Achronim, they ask according to Rabbi Elazar, that says bayom, bayom Arisha means bayom afilu b'Shabbos. How could you not do it? How could the Chacham be gozer? And I said there's a whole book. There's a Rabbi David Cohen wrote a whole book on this to answer all of the questions on the Taz. It's a big this Taz is very problematic because he says this thing and there's all these issues with it. So I just wanted to say one thing from I looked at the Meir Shiloach on the Beis Yaakov on Parshas Bamidbar coming up. I don't remember which one. That's why I'm quoting both of them. And he says a Meridika thing. He says, let's say, oh, he doesn't say this, but he says something like it. Let's say the Torah says, "Nachri tashech," to a non-Jew, you should charge interest. You probably think it's a good thing. You should be in the loan business. Chas v'shalom, you should absolutely not be in the loan business. Besides for the potential for sinas, whatever, you have to be very careful. But even if you think, oh, the Torah says it, but Chazal say not to, they have a reason not to. They're there, it's that you're going to get close to them. It's really the opposite. They're going to hate you. But you have to be careful. The point only is just because you read something in the Torah, don't think you know what it's talking about. You have to ask the rabbis. You have to learn what the Gemara says, what the Shulchan Aruch says, what Ramosha says. But he's not using it the way I am using it, which is like, it's not enough. I always yell at people who read Chumash. So stop reading Chumash alone, right? That's my pet peeve is the people who are literalists and get angry at the text. Like, well, you're reading it wrong, right? But he's saying much more than just that. What he's saying is that you need siyata d'shmaya to get the kavanah of the Torah. You need God's help to really understand what the Torah really wants from you. Don't just read. You read a thing. I'm going to do it, right? It's like a manual. Let me run and do it. Wrong. It could be the opposite of what it says. But the Taz is saying, yeah, the rabbis say, don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. But the rabbis say, oh, but we're not going to contradict B'yom HaShmini Yimo. Meaning at some point the Torah has to carry through. And the way the Ishmael would explain is that's the job of the rabbis to say, this is be'etzem what has to happen. B'yom HaShmini Yimo has to be. We're not making zeh on it. Because otherwise you're blocking something, which leads me to the last thing I want to do. I don't have time to do the Gemara, but I have 2 minutes to do the Sod Yesharim. This is what I'm waiting for all night. Sod Yesharim is the Gershon Hanach of Ishmael's 3rd generation. And he says, the Gemara we're in the middle of right now is about to explain why Sukkah is B'yom Uvalayla and Lulav is only B'yom, only during the day. But here's what he says. He quotes a story in the Gemara where somebody was picking out some fruit, let's say it was dates, and he was picking the unripe dates, and there were delicious, perfectly ripe dates. And somebody said, "Why don't you pick out?" I've never seen anyone shop like this. He says, "No, I'm taking this on a journey. So for the ripe now, they'll be bad by the time I want to eat them." So what the Sod Yesharim explains is that there's 2 things. There's Shem Ehyeh, which is God's name that will be revealed. It's not revealed now. It's unripe, so it's not sweet. You're not experiencing the joy of it. But in the future, it's going to stay on it's like more connected to getting from the shorish, but that's why it's not right, because it's still connected. It still needs Yanika. And that's why it's a klipa still. So on the one hand, it's a klipa, you can't access it. it doesn't taste good. But on the other hand, it's still growing. It'll be better for you later, not now. He says that's the level of night. That's the level of the klipa, which they could be. You could because you can't access it. You can't understand it. That's the shem eya. I will be. Shem yudke vavke is the actual full ripe fruit and fruit of the day when Hashem's like gift is begalui. Peter, which means we need a minion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter. We love you. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.